Before she left, they locked her car doors for her. It is the 18th of May, 1977, a little after 10 at night in Chartiers Township, Washington County, Pennsylvania. There is a thunderstorm coming down hard enough that the drive home is going to be slow. An 18-year-old named Brenda Lee Ritter is leaving her boyfriend's house. Her boyfriend is Larry Bonazza. He and his mother walk out to her Ford Pinto with her, and before she gets in, they check the doors and they lock them. They do this because of what has been happening in Washington County. In the 8 months before this night, young women in and around this county have been taken and killed. Not one, not two. The county has been counting, and the count keeps rising, and nobody has been arrested for any of it. Mothers are meeting daughters at the ends of driveways. Girls are being told to drive with the doors locked and the windows up, and to stop for nothing. So Brenda pulls out into the rain at 10:10 with her doors locked, exactly as she has been told, and she drives toward home in North Strabane. She never gets there. The drive she is making is not long. Chartiers Township to North Strabane is a matter of minutes on a clear night. But this is not a highway. This is Washington County in the 1970s, which means 2-lane roads that bend around hills, farm fences, long stretches with no houses and no lights, and the occasional intersection where 4 dark roads meet and there is nothing at any corner of it. The Pinto she is driving is a small car and a light one. On a night like this, the rain would be coming off the road in sheets under her headlights, and everything past the reach of them would be nothing at all. The next morning, her Pinto is found abandoned in South Strabane, empty, a few miles from where she started. And here is the detail that has sat at the center of this case for nearly 50 years, unmoved, waiting for someone to explain it. Those locked doors did not save her, which means that somewhere on a dark road in a thunderstorm, between her boyfriend's driveway and her own, Brenda Ritter opened them. She was a secretary. She worked for Kennedy and Carter, a construction firm in the city of Washington, the county seat, the kind of job an 18-year-old takes when she has finished school and decided to stay near the people she grew up with. She lived in North Strabane Township. She had a boyfriend a few townships over, which in that part of Pennsylvania means a drive of 10 or 15 minutes through hills and 2-lane roads and not much light. She was born on the 28th of October, 1958. She was 18 years and just under 7 months old on the night she died. There is a small correction worth making here, because it appears in the official record and it has been repeated for decades. The Pennsylvania State Police, in their own public appeals about this case, describe Brenda as 17. Her birth date and her death date do not agree with that. She was 18. It is a small thing and it changes nothing about what happened to her, but it is her age, and she is entitled to have it right. The storm that night was severe. That matters more than weather usually matters in a story like this, and it will matter again later. Rain like that changes a road. It puts a wall of water on a windshield that wipers cannot clear. It makes headlights behind you into a smear. It makes an ordinary drive into a slow, tense, half-blind crawl. And it makes a person more willing to stop, because in that kind of weather, stopping feels like the safe thing to do rather than the dangerous one. Her route home was a route she drove all the time. She did not follow it. The morning of the 19th of May, her car is sitting in South Strabane Township. Not smashed, not burned, not hidden, just stopped and empty, and off the line she should have been driving. Picture what that looks like to the first officer who walks up to it. A young woman's car sitting in the wrong township in the gray light after a storm. The doors, the seats, everything ordinary and everything wrong. South Strabane Police and North Strabane Police began looking for her, and they are joined by 25 Pennsylvania state troopers. That number is worth holding on to. 25 troopers on the first day for one missing 18-year-old. This is not a county treating a young woman as a runaway. This is a county that already knows what it is looking for, because it has looked 4 times before. They put a state police helicopter in the air. From the air, along a stretch of rural road called Roop Road, The crew sees something on a hillside. That is what searching looked like in that county. There was no phone in her pocket to ping. There was no camera on a pole at an intersection. There was a car and a map and a radius, and men walking hillsides in wet grass. And above them, a helicopter flying slow passes over ground that in May in western Pennsylvania is green and thick and very good at hiding things. She is roughly 3/4 of a mile from her own car. Her clothing is scattered within about 50 feet of her. The coroner, Farrell Jackson, will put her death between 11:30 at night and midnight, which means she was killed within an hour and a half of leaving a driveway where 2 people had just locked her doors for her. She had been sexually assaulted, and she had been strangled. I am not going to describe what was done to her beyond that. The method is in the public record, and I have read it, and repeating it here would tell you nothing about her killer that the plain word does not already tell you, and it would take an 18-year-old woman and reduce her to the worst hour of her life. What matters for the investigation is what the method revealed rather than what it looked like. It was improvised. It was made from what was already there. Whoever did this did not bring a weapon with him. Take that seriously for a moment. He did not need one. He got her to stop, or he got her to open a locked car. And once she was out of that car, he did not require a single thing he had not found at the scene. Everything about that suggests a man who was not planning a murder when the night began, or a man who had learned that he did not need to plan. In her car, investigators recovered hair and fingerprints. They tested her for drugs on the theory that she might have been sedated or impaired in some way that would explain how easily she was taken. Those tests came back negative. She was not drugged. Whatever made her stop that night, she made that decision clear-headed. And near the scene, they found a broken bracelet with a name engraved on it. The name was Jack. Nearly 50 years later, that bracelet has never been publicly tied to anyone. It was found, it was logged, it was chased, and it went nowhere that was ever announced. It may have belonged to the man who killed her. It may have been lying on the Pennsylvania hillside for a year before she ever got there. Nobody has ever said in public which of those it was. Donald Zofchak, the South Strabane police chief, noted the thing that everyone kept coming back to. She was not on her normal route home. So the investigation started with the question that has never been answered. Why did an 18-year-old woman driving a familiar road in a bad storm with her doors locked at the specific instruction of 2 frightened adults end up somewhere she had no reason to be, with her car parked and herself outside of it? There is one theory that state investigators took seriously at the time, and it is the single most unsettling idea in this entire case. Somebody may have been pretending to be a police officer. Think about what that would explain. It explains the locked doors opening. It explains a route change, because a car with lights behind you does not ask, it directs. It explains why there was no struggle where the car was found. It explains why a girl who had been warned for 8 straight months about a man killing young women in her county would voluntarily pull over on a dark road at 11 at night and roll down her window in the rain. It explains all of it, and it is unprovable, and no one has ever been charged with it. The 8 months that came before Brenda Ritter are the reason her name is rarely spoken on its own. It began in November of 1976. Barbara Jean Lewis, 30 years old, was taken near her home in Penn Hills in neighboring Allegheny County and was found strangled, her hands bound behind her. Days later, on the 24th of November, Susan Rush, 21, of the city of Washington, left a store at the Washington Mall in the evening. She was found in the trunk of her own car. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled. Think about the specific shape of that one. She finished at a store at the mall in the evening in November, and she walked out to her own car in her own town. And the next time anyone saw her, she was inside that car, in the trunk of it. Whoever took her did not have to take her anywhere. He used what she arrived in. In February of 1977, Mary Irene Jency, 16, left her home in North Charleroi to meet friends and did not come back. Her body was found days later in a hayfield in Fallowfield Township, near the Charleroi Sportsman's Club. She had been sexually assaulted and beaten. The coroner who examined her found she had been about 5 or 6 weeks pregnant. The same coroner, describing what had been done to her, said the person responsible had behaved like a mad animal. On the 17th of March, Deborah Jeanette Capiola, 17, walked toward her school bus stop in Findlay Township and never reached it. She was 17 and she was walking to a school bus in the morning on a road she walked every school day of her life. She was found 10 days later, on the 27th of March, in woods near an abandoned strip mine in Robinson Township, along the line where Allegheny County meets Washington County. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled with her own blue jeans, which were still wrapped around her neck. Then Brenda, in May. Then, in June, a young woman on the grounds of a convent at Mount St. Joseph in Wheeling, West Virginia, less than an hour down the river, killed the same way. The newspapers gave it a name, the Washington Strangler. That spring, in that county, a young woman could not simply drive home. She checked the back seat before she got in. She watched the headlights behind her and counted the turns they made. Parents arranged for daughters to call the moment they arrived somewhere, and then waited by the phone for the call. Boyfriends and their mothers walked girls out to their cars in the rain and locked the doors for them, which is not a strange thing for the Bonaza family to have done on the 18th of May. It was the ordinary behavior of frightened, sensible people, and by then, everybody in the county was doing some version of it. Understand what a name like that does to a county of that size. Washington County in 1977 was mill towns and farm roads and small boroughs where everyone's family had been there 3 generations. It was not a place with a category for this, and so the county did what frightened places do. It built a monster. One man, one shadow, one figure moving between these little towns, picking off girls on their way home. And the fact that nobody could catch him only made him larger. Every warning Brenda received in the months before her death came from that belief. Lock your doors. He is out there. He is one man and he is hunting here. The belief was reasonable. The murders were close together in time, close together in geography, and terribly similar in kind. Young women, sexual assault, strangulation, bodies left in woods and fields and cars on the edges of small towns. The investigation in 1977 did what an investigation in 1977 could do. Troopers canvassed. Detectives worked tips. They built a profile out of the coroner's observations, and Farrell Jackson described the man they were looking for as between 20 and 30 years old. Not unattractive, but average in appearance. Not especially intelligent, but smart enough to know his victims' routes and to follow them. Read that again. Smart enough to know his victims' routes. That is a description of somebody local. Somebody who was not passing through. Somebody who knew which road a girl in North Strabane would take home from Chartiers Township at 10 at night, and knew it well enough to be waiting on it. By 1983, when the drifter Henry Lee Lucas began confessing to murders across 16 states, investigators looked hard at whether any of the Washington County cases belonged to him. He was never charged with any of them. The confessions of Henry Lee Lucas were later shown to be, in large part, worthless. He confessed to a great many things he could not possibly have done, and detectives across the country spent years unwinding the damage. And by then, the profile had aged with the case. The same investigators noted that the man they had described as between 20 and 30 in 1977 would, by the 1980s, be a man in middle age, living somewhere, ordinary. That is where these cases sat. Files in a barracks, evidence in storage, a profile of a man who could be anyone, in a county where everybody's neighbor was a man of about the right age. And there was a structural problem underneath all of it, which nobody at the time had the tools to fix. Look at where these women were taken. Barbara Jean Lewis was Penn Hills, which is Allegheny County. Susan Rush was the city of Washington, which is Washington County. Mary Irene Jency was North Charleroi, in the Mon Valley, at the other end of the county from Brenda. Deborah Capiola went missing in Findlay Township, in Allegheny County, and was found in Robinson Township, right on the county line. Brenda left from Chartiers Township and was found in South Strabane, and the June killing was across a state border entirely, at a convent in Wheeling, West Virginia. 6 investigations, municipal departments, 2 county detective offices, 2 state police jurisdictions, and a second state. In 1977, there was no shared database any of them could type a name into. There was no national index of violent crime patterns, and no way for a detective in Findlay to know that what he was looking at rhymed with something a trooper 30 miles south was looking at, except by picking up a telephone and thinking to make the call. So each department had one piece. The newspapers and the public were the only ones holding all 6 pieces at once, which is precisely why the public was the group that concluded there was one man doing it. They were the only ones in a position to see the pattern, and they were the least equipped to interpret it. What changed was not a detective. What changed was that the evidence they had kept became readable. In 1977, when Deborah Capiola was found, the jeans that had been used to strangle her were collected and examined, and during the autopsy, a stain was identified on them: biological material. In 1977, that meant almost nothing. It could establish a blood type, which narrows a suspect pool to millions of people. It could not name anyone. Consider the position that put investigators in. They were holding, physically in their hands, material that had come from the man who killed her. They possessed him. They simply had no way to read what they were holding. A blood type could tell them that their suspect was not excluded, which is an enormous distance from telling them he was guilty, and no distance at all toward telling them who he was. So the genes went into evidence storage, and they stayed there while the case went cold. And they stayed there through the 1980s. And they stayed there while the men who had first worked the case retired. 23 years later, somebody pulled them back out. In early 2000, investigators sent the genes, together with a blood sample from a man named David Kennedy, to a private laboratory called Cellmark Diagnostics. The point of that comparison is worth being exact about, because it is the hinge of this entire story. They were not asking a computer to search the world for a match. They already had a man in mind, from the original investigation, from decades of suspicion that had never been provable. What they were asking was narrower and far more powerful. Is this him? The results, in the language of the court that later reviewed them, inculpated him. David Kennedy of Cecil, Washington County, was charged in December of 2000 with the murder of Deborah Capiola. He was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without parole for strangling a 17-year-old girl with her own jeans on the 17th of March, 1977. It had taken 23 years to charge him and several more to bring him to trial. The jury needed about 2 hours. Every instinct the county had built over 23 years said the same thing. They had caught the Washington Strangler. They had not. Investigators tested the same man against the other murders, against Susan Rush in November of 1976, against Mary Irene Jency in February of 1977. The evidence did not implicate him. It excluded him. The man who had killed Deborah Capiola had not killed those 2 women, and there was never enough to tie him to Brenda Ritter either. That word deserves precision, because precision matters when the subject is whether a man in prison also killed somebody else. Exclusion is not a failure to find proof. It is the opposite. It is a positive finding that the biological material recovered from those scenes did not come from him. A profile that does not match is not a gap in the case. It is an answer, and the answer was no. So the county had a convicted killer, in one case, and 4 other dead women who were still nobodies. Then, in May of 2010, 33 years after Mary Irene Jency was killed, Pennsylvania State Police arrested 2 men for her murder, David Bernard DeVoley and Robert William Irwin Jr. DeVoley was not a stranger to the case. He had been the prime suspect in 1977. Charges against him had been dropped in July of that year because there was not enough evidence to proceed. He had been suspected, publicly, within months of her death, and then let go. And then he had lived in that valley for 33 years while her file sat closed and unsolved. What finally made the case was not one thing. It was DNA from evidence that had been preserved since 1977, and it was witnesses, people who had known something for 3 decades and finally said it out loud. Irwin was convicted of 3rd-degree murder in October of 2011. DeVoley pleaded guilty. 2 solved cases, 2 convictions in one, and 2 in the other. And here is what those cases proved, together, about the monster Washington County had spent 30 years imagining. He did not exist. There was no Washington Strangler. There was never one man moving between these towns. When the science finally arrived and could speak, it named a man in Cecil for one girl and 2 men in the Mon Valley for another. And it specifically ruled the first man out of the others. What had looked like a single predator was, at minimum, 3 different men in the same county in the same 8 months, all of them local, none of them caught at the time. That is a more frightening answer than the one everybody was afraid of. It is easier to live in a county with one monster in it. A monster can be caught, and when he is caught, it is over. What Washington County actually had in the winter and spring of 1976 and 1977 was several ordinary men who had each worked out, separately, that a young woman alone on a rural road at night was something they could take, and that in that place, at that time, nobody was going to stop them. Which brings this back to a locked Ford Pinto in a thunderstorm. If there was no single strangler, then the man who killed Brenda Ritter was not a legend passing through the county. He was somebody who was there. Somebody who, on the evidence of everything the coroner and the investigators described, knew the roads she used, was somewhere on one of them at 11 at night in a storm, and was able to make a frightened 18-year-old, whose doors had been locked for her by 2 people who loved her that very evening, stop her car and open it. The people who worked this case in 1977 believed that might have taken a badge or something that looked like one. Nobody has ever proven it. Nobody has ever been charged. In this case, unlike the other 2, there has been no laboratory result made public, no arrest, no trial, no name. Her file has been open for 49 years, and there is no ending here that I can give you because there has not been one. But look at what actually broke the 2 cases that did break. In Deborah Capiola's case, it was a piece of clothing that somebody chose to keep in an evidence room for 23 years, through 5 presidencies, when there was no technology on Earth that could read it, and no reason to believe there ever would be. In Mary Irene Jency's case, it was that same kind of preservation, plus something even simpler. People who had known something for 33 years finally told the police. Neither case was solved by a genius. Both were solved by patience, and by ordinary people who did unglamorous things correctly for decades, and, in the second case, by somebody deciding that 33 years of silence was long enough. Brenda's case is still being worked. In June of 2024, the Pennsylvania State Police put her case out again publicly, on their own channels, with her name and the date and the road and the same appeal they have been making since 1977. In November of 2025, a reward of $5,000 was announced for information leading to an arrest or a conviction, funded through asset forfeiture rather than from taxpayers. The state police barracks in Washington still has a trooper assigned to it. The man the coroner described, between 20 and 30 in 1977, would be in his 70s or 80s now, if he is alive at all. That sounds like the case running out of time. The Jency case says otherwise. DeVoley and Irwin were arrested as older men for something they had done as young ones. And the reason it happened was that the evidence was still in a box and the people who knew were still breathing. Somebody in Washington County knows something about a night in a thunderstorm in May of 1977. A man who came home late and wet, a car that was not where it should have been, a broken bracelet with the name Jack on it, and whose wrist it came off. They have known it for 49 years. Brenda Lee Ritter is buried in the Emmanuel United Presbyterian Church Cemetery in a small Washington County town called 84, about 15 minutes from the road where she was found. Her stone gives 2 dates, the 28th of October, 1958, and the 18th of May, 1977. She was 18. She did everything she was told to do. She locked her doors. Anyone with information about the murder of Brenda Lee Ritter can contact the Pennsylvania State Police Station at Washington, Pennsylvania at 724-223-5200 or the Pennsylvania Crime Stoppers tip line at 1-800-472-8477. Tips can be given anonymously. Somebody opened that car door for a reason. Somebody still knows what it was.